Thank you so very, very much. To all of the distinguished people on this platform, those who have helped to shape the state of Mississippi, and you're still doing so. For those of you who have walked hand in hand with me through the stress, through the turmoil, through my period of hatred of my native state, of coming out of that dark veil into one of light and sunshine, warmth and belief that Mississippi is not all that people think that it is. It is so much more. It is so much more because of the people such as you in the audience, such as the people on this stage who have given so much, such as the people who are included in Mississippi 2 museums. I will tell you, when I first heard of the concept of 2 museums, I immediately thought, are we going back to our old practices? Are we having 2 separate but possible equal museums? Governor Winter, you played a major role in helping me to understand that there were 2 museums joined by steps, but each had a different role, and they were both here on Mississippi ground. Yes, my suspicions have been there, and I have had to fight them as I have loved the state of my birth, where I have and do love the state and all of the promises that it gives to its citizens, the leadership that it shows to people in the United States of America and around the world. I understand now, Governor Winter and others, the 2 museums. For one is not complete without the other. I had the opportunity of going through both with time to look and to digest what is there. These museums, my friends, are priceless. The learning that will flow from them and to the people who go there and study and watch and feel the emotion from walls that we think have no feeling. But you know the souls of those who are on exhibit. You hear the sounds. You hear the sounds of the horror. But you hear the sounds of coming together and building not only a strong nation, but the state of Mississippi. I stand before you today saying, I believe in the state of my birth. And that is something that I never thought that I would say. But today I stand before you and I speak the truth. In going through the museums, I had a better understanding of the state of Mississippi. And I thought I knew the state of my birth. Going through the museum of my history, I wept because I felt the blows. I felt the bullets. I felt the tears. I felt the cries. But I also sensed the hope that dwelled in the hearts of all of those people and those children. And it transferred into the hope and the love that we find in the other building. So where does the separate come from? A word, because both buildings share the same heart, share the same beat of humanity. And it is my hope that not only in Mississippi, not only in America, but across this world, people will come here to study about humanity, to study about how we have made progress, how we can set a role for others to follow. And my challenge is to those of you in this audience and beyond, make use of these jewels that we have here. Walk through the halls and be able to put your fingers in the bullet holes. Walk through these halls and hear the sounds of the gospels, of the cries, of the tears, but of the beliefs and the hope that Mississippi will one day be solid, strong, lead the way, not only for those of us here, but throughout America, because today we are being challenged almost as we were when Medgar Evers was alive. I recall when he said to me, and I asked, why? Why must you be the one to put your life on the line? And he looked at me and said, you really don't understand, do you? I raised up and I said, of course I understand. He said, but where is the depth of your understanding? It's not just about me. It is not just about you, but it is about each and every one of us who live in this state and who embrace this country, the United States of America, because regardless of race, creed, or color, we are all Americans. And that is what this institution brings to the forefront. And that if Mississippi can rise to the occasion, then the rest of the country should be able to do the same thing. Because today I stand before you and I say we in America are still suffering from some of the same ills that we have over the years, and it is left to each one of us here. And to those who hear our voices from those cameras that stand there and capture this moment, that you will realize that freedom is not free. It is people coming together, of people reaching in their pockets and coming up with the money and saying, this is my state. This is my country. And I refuse to turn it over to anyone who dares to challenge that. Stand tall. Be a Mississippian. Stand tall. Be an American. Stand tall in the belief that we have justice, equality, regardless of race, creed, or color. So I implore upon you, visit these institutions. Learn about the state of Mississippi. Learn about those who cared enough to put their lives on the line. Learn, give, go. And in the songs that we have sung so often, go tell it on the mountain that Mississippi has two museums linked together in love, in hope, and in justice. Thank you.